raise that bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Gear, and today we're sitting with Olie KOLZIG. What a pleasure to have a big NHL vet, obviously Vezina winner, played quite a few years in the NHL, and now doing development with Washington Capitals and been doing that for a little while. I guess a couple quick things. One thing that, I've got to know you really well over the last bunch of years, and chatted about a lot of different variety of things, but your kind of intro to hockey and kind of how you actually got into hockey is pretty interesting. So if someone came out to you and said, "Hey, Olie, where's home for you? What's your hometown? Where were you born? Where were you raised? Kind of your first couple of years of life."
I tell people I like to be, a friend of mine coined this term a few years ago. He called me Germafricadian.
There you go.
So I was a German citizen born in South Africa, grew up in Canada, and I've been in the States since '87.
And how long were you in South Africa for?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, my folks were both German, and they were in the hotel business, and they moved down to Johannesburg after they did all their schooling in Germany, and they got married shortly after I came along, and then 2 years later we moved to Copenhagen, and shortly after we moved to Edmonton, and then that's kind of where I started playing hockey.
No way. And how old were you when you moved to Edmonton?
I was just under 4. I was just a little before I was 4 years old.
Yeah. And then just started kind of like everybody playing minor hockey, probably just.
Yeah, my dad followed hockey when he was in Germany, and obviously you're Edmonton, and it's middle of winter. It's a lot of rinks available, so they got me started, and we started on the outdoor rink. So I got introduced to the harshest part of it, but really enjoyed it. Interesting though, it's ironic that I ended up having such a long career as a goaltender. Back in minor hockey, everybody's expected to play goal at least once. And I remember my time when they put the gear on me, and it was the middle of the night, an outdoor rink in Edmonton. So you got to remember it's cold. And I did not want to get touched by the puck. So kid had a breakaway on me early in the game. And I turned around, I hid behind the net.
Nice.
So it's kind of ironic that I ended up having such a long career. Yeah.
Now, when you first went in, obviously the next couple of games you didn't play net. After that, you kind of played.
I didn't play net really until I was about 10 years old.
Okay, cool.
I started, like I said, started playing hockey when I was around 4 or 5. They say now for goaltenders you should develop your skating first. Yeah. And I did. I was a defenseman. I was a forward. I played all the positions, and and it just happened to be it just happened accidentally. We were playing a minor hockey game, and goalie didn't show up for whatever reason. I don't know why, but he didn't show up. So we needed a guy to play, and coach chose me. Put the gear on. I got a shutout that game. And
it's a good way to start.
It's a great way to start. Everybody's patting you on the back, telling you how great you are. And I thought, you know what, this could be pretty cool. Yeah. So I stuck with it, and it wasn't until the first time I got shelled and booed and that I'm thinking, well, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. But no, I stuck with it, and then obviously it paid off.
Oh, it's amazing, man. And were you always like a bigger guy? Because you got good stat, obviously good size, and even just
what I was like every typical kid. You're developing normally, and then when you hit about 13, 14 years old, you have this growth spurt, and that happened to me. And for the first year after that happened, I was like Bambi on the ice. I was uncoordinated.
For sure, yeah.
But then obviously once I got my bearings and got used to my body, it obviously became my biggest strength.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I was opposite. I was like the biggest guy on my team in Pee Wee, and then never grew.
It just stopped.
Yeah, I was literally the tallest guy in some of the pictures, and then every year shorter, and then by the end I was one of the shorter guys. So I got I hate
to tell you, buddy, you're getting older now, so you're going to start shrinking even more.
I know. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Yeah, I got bad genes. I got bald, short. Come on, it's a tough one.
You make up for it with your personality.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. Thank you very much. Right, but I think we'll end on that note. And then was your dad? Your dad probably wasn't a player. He loved the game.
My dad was a soccer player, tennis player.
So an athlete then, obviously.
Sort of. I mean, it was more of a casual thing, but soccer ran in my family. My uncle was a Division III goalie in Germany. And so I also took that up. I was a goalie in soccer during the summertime. And but no, obviously like every dad, you want to introduce your kids to something and see if they like it. And he thought, we're in Canada. It's Canada's sport. And so he introduced it to me, and I stuck with it.
Oh, that's cool. And then growing up in Edmonton, did you play other sports? Like, were you involved in, kind of tennis like your dad or soccer? Did you
well,
play
we only lived in Edmonton for a year. So it was that 1 year. And then we moved to the Northwest Territories for a year.
Holy.
Yeah. It was even darker and colder, if you can imagine.
Did you play up there as well?
Played up there, but we played indoors.
Yeah.
We played an indoor rink. And that was an experience. It was a unique time where, you experience 24 hours of darkness in the winter and then 24 hours of light in the summer. I remember we had to have tinfoil on our windows in the summer, and it was pretty cool. But we only stayed there a year, and then shortly after we moved to Mississauga in Ontario, and that's really where my hockey really started to take off. Played in the MTHL, and but no. I kind of forgot.
As far as like other sports and stuff. Like, did you?
Then I, once I moved to Toronto, then obviously the weather was a little bit more tolerable, and so I played soccer, I played touch football, I played tennis.
Yeah.
My passion now is golf, but I didn't play golf until I was 19. So,
right.
But I think back then, as should be the case now for hockey players, you experience all the different sports and you apply those athletics to your game. And I think it really rounds out you as an athlete. And we didn't really look at it that way back then.
Yeah.
But with hockey being such a business now, and parents wanting to get them, do the most for their kids to have them succeed, they do sort of get wrapped up in the game and not get involved in other sports like we did when we were younger.
No, and I think that's one thing that we talk about a lot is creating better athletes, not necessarily hockey players or basketball players. And the better, like a lot of the best players that we deal with on the development side are good athletes. I was talking to Willie today,
Colby Williams, yeah, for sure.
He played football, basketball. He didn't even know if he was going to be a hockey player until he said 19. He was playing in the WHL, high level, obviously. And coach said, like, if you want to do this, you can actually play. Like, he still loved the other sports a little bit and wasn't like, kind of knew that he was going to play hockey, but didn't really make that. Okay. Yeah. But he's just an athlete. Like, and you can see him now, like the way he moves, the way he skates, and
pure athlete, plays golf. He told me the same story. He actually, was playing, he was going to play for the young Pats in Regina. And he told the coach, listen, I want to play football too. And the coach says, well, you can't do that. He says, well, then I'm going to go play football. And so they made an exception and then allowed him to play hockey. And then he realized, hey, I'm not too bad at this game. And he never saw himself as a possible NHL guy.
Yeah.
So I think it's really just starting to set in now that he has a realistic chance to play in the NHL.
And it's funny, like when you look at a situation like that, I give a lot of credit to the parents in those types of situations, like for Colby or guys like that or girls like that, where the parents aren't putting too much pressure on one sport. They're allowing them to do other things and experience other, we deal with parents right now on the minor hockey level. It's unbelievable, right? Like they're putting all their eggs in the baskets at 7 years old that they're going to play in the NHL. And
well, and take that even further, like, chances are the kid's not going to play in the NHL.
Yeah.
But chances are that kid's not going to like playing hockey anymore because of the amount of pressure the parents are putting on them. And,
for sure.
And just, it's nonstop 24 hours a day, 365 days a year of hockey. They're just going to be burnt out by the time they're teenagers.
No, totally. Now, in kind of Mississauga, Toronto area, is that, like when did you decide that, I think I'm going to like hockey was kind of your number one sport. I'm assuming you probably love that more than the other sports, but did you get extra training? Did you end up doing some goalie specific stuff at a certain age, or is there an age that you remember doing?
It was
getting a goalie coach or like that?
It was a different time back then. It's not like it is now where, the kids are getting specific instruction early on. And it wasn't that case. I mean, we had coaches that sort of knew what goaltending was. I mean, that was back when you had the kick save and the 2-pad stack and all the stuff that they totally have eliminated nowadays. But
the good old days, though,
the good old days.
Yeah.
So it was more of a, it wasn't quite as technical. It was more of an instinctive, just try to stop the puck. And, the biggest, most athletic goalies were usually the most successful. And, so I didn't really get into the training part of it probably until I got listed by the New Westminster Bruins of the Western Hockey League. I was playing at the time. We'd moved to Nova Scotia, played my midget AAA there, and we had a really good team and went to the Air Canada Cup. And I think it's called the TELUS Cup.
Yeah.
But so I was scouted by New West, and they listed me, and my folks had already moved to BC the year before. I just stayed in.
I was going to say, so you were, because realistically, if you were in Nova Scotia, you would have been a part of the queue. right? So
Back
by
then,
you guys moving,
but I don't think that rule was in place
Okay.
yet. But because my parents had moved to BC,
right, so you were falling in that.
even though
okay.
I stayed that one extra year,
Yeah.
I basically lived with the trainer of our team. And
It'd be your residence. So that's like, I know nowadays, like even if a kid from Newfoundland moves to, like we had this happen, a kid from Newfoundland moved to Ontario, but still got drafted in the queue. So his parents still lived in the queue. They had an address there. That was his hometown. He just came to Ontario to play, and go to school. And then, but he's
So it's
still
all based where the family's at.
Yeah, exactly. It's based, it's based kind of
Yeah,
where
and
your home
same. So
address
same
is,
with us now, like because I'm involved with the Tri-City Americans, and so when we deal with obviously we get all the Western provinces, but we deal with the Western U.S. I think all the way to Minnesota is what our territory is, and then from there on,
all the way down, right? Like right down
all the way down to
California,
to California, Texas. And I think that's the border, and up to Minnesota, and then everything past that goes to Ontario.
Yeah.
And then I think the New England states are for Quebec. So, so I ended up getting listed by New West, and after I was done with my school in Nova Scotia, I moved back with my folks, and that summer I just decided to go to a gym. I didn't really have a specific program.
Yeah.
Back then it was the basic stuff: squats, bench press, military press, dips. I mean, all there wasn't any position specific workouts yet.
Yeah.
So, I came in camp in good shape, maybe not the shape I needed to be in for a goaltender, but as an athlete, it was an okay shape. And from there on, the training got a little bit more specific.
Yeah.
And then obviously when you get drafted, then it really becomes specific.
Yeah. I remember when I was young, going into locker rooms and you see like, guys tying their skates and stuff, and everyone's jacked arms and shoulders and chests, and legs are just kind of, now you go in these locker rooms, you look at these guys and upper body's like, okay. And they got big butts, they got big legs. Like they're putting the time in the right things. And like you said, like maybe I was in good shape, but maybe not in good hockey playing shape, right? Like no matter if you're a forward, D, goalie, everything's going to be a little bit different. But the way the guys train now compared to the way we did, like we looked really good at the beach and, really good in the summer with our tank tops on, but sometimes maybe not so applicable to.
We got our getaway sticks for legs, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But obviously as a goalie, I knew at least back then that as a goalie you needed powerful legs. So, I always had strong legs, big butt. And then I think, the nowadays the bench press isn't nearly as needed for overall fitness. Yes, but it's definitely the core. Yeah. The legs, the butt, explosiveness, agility. It's amazing to see these kids work out now and what they have access to. Here in Hershey, I mean,
totally.
Mike Wagner's done a great job organizing the gym there, but it's just crazy. But seeing this, it's almost like a circus act when you go in there and you watch these. They're training for Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, and some of the exercises you see, if we walked into a gym 20 years ago, we'd be like, "What are you doing?
Exactly.
Like, are you kidding me? Look at that guy!
All right.
Put another plate on the bench." Right? Like, it's so funny though, right? And then when you look at it, like we're obviously on the development side, so kind of maybe have a bit of an inside scoop on what is going on, what's trending, and what guys are doing. And you look at it, you're like, yeah, it makes sense. Like especially when you talk to a guy like Wags and he explains it to you, you're like, yeah, it totally makes sense why they're doing this or what the reason is behind this, and how detailed they are now at the NHL level and then the AHL level and even down to junior hockey on heart rate and how much they're exerting themselves, how much how heavy their workload is throughout the week and all this different stuff now that they're looking at. Where back in the day there was none of that. 3-3, like you go hard.
3-3, and then if you didn't play well in the third game, and I remember we'd pull up in the bus and the coach would say, "Don't hang it up, boys. Put it back on." And we go on the ice with a weight vest and you get bagged, and you just played 3-3 and you're getting bagged. And no, it's totally different now. I mean, we have a thing here. It's called First Beat, and the guys are wearing heart rate monitors, and Wags monitors these guys during the week to see what their workload is in practice, so that if they struggle maybe on a weekend, there's a correlation between the workload they've had during the week and they might be too tired for those games, so that if that's the case, the coaches will tweak the practices the following week so the workload might not be as high, and even position specific drills. There's drills there that just bag the goalies and the D, and it's easy for the forwards, and then you come into a game in the weekend, you wonder why the D and the goalies are struggling. Well, that's because they just got the heck beat out of them during the week. So it's a great tool to have. It helps the coaches adjust their practices accordingly.
And I mean, obviously, it helps the players be more successful, right? At the end of the day, and which is what you
want at this level, for sure.
Totally, right? You got to win, but you want the kids to do well, and you want them to kind of push and hopefully move on and do what they want to do, right?
Yeah.
Going to the dub. What was that? Now, did you play your first year, like your first out, like, so like kind of, I guess you're back then would be in your 16-year-old year, 15-year-old year for.
Well,
for young
I
goalie,
was a 17-year-old, and I started out in the BCJHL in Abbotsford, but I stayed in New Westminster. I billeted with 4 other veterans that were playing for the Bruins at the time, but I billeted with them, and then I would drive to Abbotsford. It was a 45-minute drive for practice, and then occasionally I'd stay in New West and practice with the team. And I remember the very first time I got called up. The goaltenders in New West were struggling a little bit, and the coach wanted a spark, and so I got the call, but I was already back in New West, so I had to drive back to Abbotsford to get my gear. So I called the trainer in Abbotsford, and when I get there, my gear's all packed, and so I just throw it in the car and come back to New West. Next morning, we get on the bus. We have an 8-hour bus ride to Spokane, and I'm excited. I'm sitting on the bus. I'm nervous. I'm just thinking about all this stuff, and I get in the dressing room and unpacking my gear. My skates weren't in there.
Come on.
They took my skates out to get them re-riveted. And we had an old school hard-nosed coach, and I told him what had happened. And fortunately there was 3 goalies that were on the trip. So, they ended up, I forget who started, but I thought I was done. I thought as soon as we get back, go back to Abbotsford, this isn't the proper way to start your junior career. But I came back, and then I started that next night in New West, and I think we beat the Moose Jaw Warriors that night, and stayed with the team the rest of the year.
No way.
Yep. And then the following year, and New West was a very established junior team, a lot of history. And then the next year, we find out we're moving to Eastern Washington State.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Tri-Cities. They built.
So that's
where New West moved down to Tri-Cities.
Cool.
So we we went down. They had some sort of hockey fest for us in the summer, and we got there, and we're like, they got hockey here? It's in the middle of the desert. It's just. Hockey was successful in Spokane and Seattle, Portland, and this just made sense because we were kind of in the middle. So, it was 3 hours to Seattle, 3 hours to Portland, 2.5 hours to Spokane. So it made sense for the Western Division. Yeah. But we our building wasn't finished yet.
No way.
And so when we first came down, we had our training camp in Chilliwack. After camp, we all hopped in the cars and we drove down, 6-hour drive down to Tri-Cities. And we didn't have, our arena wasn't going to be done until middle of November. So that area in the summertime can be anywhere between 95 and 105 degrees. This is dry heat, but it's warm,
it's still hot, yeah.
So we had our gear, we hung our gear in a UPS hangar that was right next to an airfield, which was where kind of our building was. And we'd practice in Walla Walla, which was an hour away. And we had this 1969 MCI bus, old cloth seats, no air conditioning. And so we'd pack up our stuff. We'd drive to Walla Walla. The rink was maybe 2/3 the size of a normal rink.
Nice.
The ceiling, if a guy really took a back scratcher of a one-timer, the stick would graze the ceiling.
No way.
There was no showers. There was really no dressing rooms. So after practice, we'd get undressed down to our underwear, throw the gear back on the bus, and then we'd go in the bus. We'd still be soaked from practice, sitting in these cloth seats.
Yeah, that's really nice.
We had to prop the windows open with Coke cans just to get any kind of ventilation. And this was our bus that we used for 2 years.
No way.
Yeah. So we
like
did
on road trips and
on
stuff
road
too?
trips. Yeah. So we did this. We had to do this for the better part of 2 months, 2.5 months, and played our first 17 games on the road. And then that opening night, middle of November, was unbelievable. We sold out 2 years straight. People really didn't know all the rules of hockey. I mean, they had standing ovations for when the Zamboni came on the ice. Like, it was just great. Like, we fell in love with the city fell in love with us. We had a really good team. Ended up making the playoffs that year miraculously. I'd gone into the season as a backup. But then about 2 months in, I started becoming the number one guy. And then that summer's when I got drafted by Washington.
No way.
It was a really good year.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. And then you stayed there for one more year after that, right? After you got drafted, when
Yeah, I stayed there for one more year, but we went to training camp that year, first training camp, and it was the first time the NHL went over to Russia.
Okay.
And it was us and the Calgary Flames, and we were both in different areas of the country, so we never really saw each other. But we started out in Sweden. We were in Sweden for about a week, and then we went to Riga, which is Latvia now.
Yeah.
But back then it was still part of the USSR. Beautiful city. We went to Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg, another beautiful city.
Yeah.
And then we went to Moscow, and Moscow is just, I mean, it's monstrous. It's huge. But back then there was a lot of corruption, a lot of like black market stuff, a lot of crime.
Yeah.
And, but it was a great experience. And
you guys would have played their pro teams there?
We played all the Russian teams.
Yeah,
we didn't end up playing Calgary at all. We just
Yeah.
played the Russian teams, and then we came back over to North America. But I had an unbelievable training camp. I went in just wanting to make an impression, and I really had a good camp, and I made the team out of training camp as a 19-year-old. So I'd stuck with the team for the first month. My first start was in Hartford. We lost 4-3 to the Whalers. Actually played pretty good. My second start was in Maple Leaf Gardens.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
And I remember going there as a youngster and
for sure.
watching games, and it started out great. We were up 4-1 about halfway through the second period, and I was really playing well. And the final score was 8-4.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember Ally Afraidy took a slap shot that I didn't even react to until it bounced out, back into the slot. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm not ready for this level yet. And
so you're like, welcome to the NHL.
Welcome to the NHL. So, a few days later I got sent back, and I went, but I didn't go back with a bad attitude. I just kind of went down with the wrong attitude, and if I find out that it happens more times than not to guys that get drafted, especially first round picks. When they get sent back, they think they can dominate, and they think that, you should be able to dominate the league. And as a goalie, you don't realize that when you're playing in the NHL, it's actually easier once you're up to speed with the shots and the pace of play. It's actually easier to play than it is, say, at the American League level or the East Coast League level or even junior, because everybody up there knows to do their job.
Right.
Whereas it becomes more and more chaotic the further you go down. And so when you go down to junior, you're playing with maybe one other guy on your team that's gotten drafted, and everybody else is, they're just junior players. And so they're not as dependable.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I didn't have a lot of success early on when I got back, but I remember in November, we were playing the Seattle Thunderbirds, and I'd already had an assist in the game, and I had a penalty, and they pulled a goalie, with a minute left. We had a 2-goal lead, and I ended up shooting the puck down the ice for an empty net goal.
No way.
Yeah. So the bench was cleared. It was fantastic. I'd like to say that I elevated it over everybody's head, but it was a delayed offside. So I was able to get behind the net, and I went to shoot it, and I kind of just got the top of the puck, and it probably went about 3 feet off the ice. I remember one of my forwards had to actually lift his leg to let the puck go by, and then it just curled inside the left post. But it was awesome. It's probably the highlight of
That's pretty cool, man. Not a lot of goalies.
No, I was the first guy in the Western League to do that.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So it was cool. It was the highlight of my year to that point. The guys cleared the bench, and it was great. And the next day, I remember reading the paper, and the Seattle coach, says, well, next time we play, if Kolzig wants to act like a forward, I guess we'll treat him like one, So I was like, okay,
keep your head up.
Yeah, nice. And then I get a call from Jack Button, who was our director of player personnel at the time. And so Jack calls, and I'm thinking he's calling me to congratulate me. He goes, hey, I heard you scored last night. And I said, yeah, Jack, it was unbelievable. I also got an assist, and I had a penalty, and guys cleared the bench, and he's like, oh, well, that's great. But last time I checked, we drafted you to stop the puck and not score goals. And right now you're not doing a very good job of stopping it. So I suggest that maybe we start focusing on that again. And that's how it ended. And then I was like, oh boy. And I don't think I handled the puck the rest of the year, and started focusing a little bit more on my game. But it was.
Did your game turn around after that kind of sequence?
Not a ton, because, there's times where you start doubting yourself a little bit again. And, at that age too, for me, it took me a little while to get back to the NHL, because I was dealing with a lot of I was hard on myself. I would get mad if I gave up, a goal I think I should have stopped. And then, that snowballs into the next shot goes in the net. And it took me a few years to finally get a grasp of the mental part of the game.
Yeah.
I had to do some reading and basically giving myself some tools to be able to, once you start thinking negatively to get yourself out of that. And then once I did that, I really started to develop, I think, the way they expected me to.
Right.
But yeah, it's amazing. Like, tell these guys, you guys all have the physical capability of playing, but the difference between the guys that make it and sustain up there and the guys that don't is usually between the ears.
Oh, for sure.
And so I really try to tell the guys to really focus on that.
Yeah. It's a cool that, that's a real big thing now. I think, all the kids are doing skill development. All the kids are doing getting goalie coaches. So a lot of them are tracking, pretty much the same athletically overall. Right. But I agree with you. I think a lot of times it's that mental part of the game that is so difficult to grasp because you have a bad game and then all of a sudden you're squeezing your stick tighter or you're second guessing saves. And then it just snowballs into worse and worse and worse. Now, when you were going through all that stuff, who were some of the guys? Cause I mean, when you first got back into the NHL after your junior career and stuff, you went from, the NHL to the East Coast League or to the AHL East, like kind of bounced around a little bit. And I'm sure that's humbling and mentally really tough and exhausting on especially on a goaltender. Who kind of helped you through that? Or was there any kind of goalie pairing or a goalie coach or a coach that really kind of, or maybe a couple guys?
The thing is, I really didn't have a coach at the pro level until I was my third year pro, and I got loaned out to Rochester, Buffalo's farm team. The reason that happened is the year that I got drafted, Washington, they also drafted another goalie in the second round, Byron Defoe. Byron could go back to junior we both went to junior, but Byron had to go to junior for 2 years. I only had to go one. I was drafted as a 19-year-old.
Okay.
So my first year, I'd spent majority of the time down in the East Coast League. And I'll tell you what, when that first happened, you really start doubting yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, is the perception of the East Coast League, because that was shortly after, the league really started to turn around, but it wasn't too far removed from Slapshot.
Right.
So, that's all you think about. And I had John Brophy as a coach in Hampton Roads. And I remember watching him when he was coaching the Leafs, and I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But after that year, I really, John Brophy ended up being one of my favorite all-time coaches.
Oh, really?
He was just, because I was a guy that worked hard.
Mm-hmm.
And he really, that's all he wanted to see. He wanted guys to care and work hard. And I remember, I played a couple games on the road, and this was going to be my first home game in Norfolk. And, I forget who we were playing, but the team we played ended up scoring from center ice.
Ouch.
It's one of those ones that they shoot in and it bounces, redirects, goes the other way on you, right? So I'm like, oh boy. So
which for goalies out there is hard to stop. It looks like shit when you see it happen.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
A lot of times they take weird bounces.
Yeah,
and it's nothing.
It's just one of those ones that it happens. But I go, first of all, the fans are booing, and I'm like, oh god, this is awesome. And so we go in the dressing room between periods, and I'm just can't wait I'm just going to get it from the coach, and Brof comes out and he's yelling, and he actually gave the forward crap for not having his guy and allowing him to get that shot off.
Really?
Yeah. Because he really, he did. He had a lot of respect for me. Inside, I wasn't happy getting sent down. I mean, I was I was a high pick that made the team the year before for a couple months. And now a year later, I'm down on the coast. And so really deep down, I was bitter and I was bummed out. But I never went in there acting like a prima donna. Yeah. And I mean, I went in there and I worked hard, and Brof really appreciated that. And even called me in the office and said, hey, those things happen. Just, you're going to play a lot here. We'll just get your game back in order. And he respected the fact I came down with no complaints and so we really had a great relationship, and we ended up winning the cup that year down there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, then the next year Byron and I, so that would have been my third year pro. And coming out of camp, they both wanted Byron and I to play, and they didn't want us being on the same team.
Okay.
And so with it being my third year pro, they felt that, I was the one they were going to loan out because they wanted to keep a closer eye on Byron because it was his second year. But at that time, I didn't realize that.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, all right, they're already giving up on me. So I went to Rochester with a chip on my shoulder, and basically was, A, going to prove Washington wrong, and B, maybe have, Buffalo be interested in me by the end of the year. And so I had a really good year. We ended up losing in the finals to Cape Breton. And as a result, I ended up re-signing with Washington on a one-way contract.
Wow. Good for you.
So it really paid off. But I guess what I was going to, now that I'm on the other side of the door with management, you don't, the team has a plan for everybody.
Yeah.
And you're not being demoted to be punished. You're being demoted because, they want to put you in a place where you can succeed, where you can get confidence, where you're going to play a lot. And sometimes it's not available when you're, at the American League level for whatever reason, if it's personnel or what have you, but you don't realize it as a player. You think you're getting screwed over. And so for me, this job actually, I'm probably as good a fit for this job as anybody because I've run the gamut. I was a high pick who started out in the NHL, had a drop off, played in the coast, played in the American League, won championships in the coast in the American League, came up to Washington as a backup, struggled a little bit at first, then became a starter, and you know what I mean. So I tell the guys I'm in your shoes because I've been there.
Yeah.
I've experienced everything as a pro, and
probably in a worse spot at times than these guys are right now.
For sure,
guys they're played in the A for the last couple of years and are pissed off and a little bit. Wow, well, I'm not making this. I'm not making it to the NHL. And you've gone one step below that than a lot of these guys.
And now a lot of these guys they have the choice of being sent to the coast. So it's not. Depending on what kind of contract you sign, you're not obligated to go to the coast. Where back then, you just go where you're told to go, and then that was it. So, obviously today's generation is a lot different. It's I always say that maybe 20, 30 years ago, you had a coach and you had 20 players that had to adhere to that one coach. It's his way or the highway.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays coaches are a little bit more. They have to adhere to 20 players.
Yeah.
What works for one player doesn't necessarily work for another one. You know what I mean? So one guy needs a kick in the butt. Another guy needs to be coddled. Another guy needs to be left alone. And so I just think today's players, it's just a little different. It's not good or bad. It's just, it is what it is with social media now and cell phones. And my first introduction with a new kid is, really when you come to the rink, put your phone away and have conversations with your teammates. Don't sit there in their stall and text and, because I find sometimes now with the kids, like when you try to talk to them, a lot of them don't look you in the eye because they're not used to that interaction because they are behind their phones or behind the emails or whatever. And so I try to get the kids to interact a lot more. And, when you're talking to somebody, talk to them eye to eye. And so, I try to do that with my kids as well. It's important.
I think it's so important. And those are like sometimes old school traits, right? Yeah. That we kind of lose a little bit, and things have changed and a lot of things have changed for the better. But at the same time, I agree. Sometimes it's nice to hear that from someone that they respect, obviously like yourself, they look up to, and just kind of almost teaching them how to be good pros. Right. And I think that's a big thing. I think going back to your role kind of within Washington as kind of, director of player development, helping out with these young guys getting accustomed to the pro, I think it's so valuable to have a guy like you there because, even when you were growing up, a lot of times you weren't told a lot of things. You're just sent down. No one really probably talked to you and explained to you what the process is. And I think a lot of these young guys don't know the process. So they get here, they get sent down from, we had situations here, guys almost real close to making the NHL, cap issues, whatever it is, get sent down bitter, pissed off. Well, now you come in and you talk to them, listen, this is why it happened. You still be pissed and work your butt off to get back up there. But there's other reasons why things happen, not necessarily because you're a bad kid or you're not good enough. And then he gets a shot again and has a real good run. And now he's kind of got that juice back a little bit, right? But if no one's telling them this stuff, they're going to stew about it for a week, 2 weeks, a month, until someone maybe talks to them, maybe not, right? And back in the day, there was not a lot of communication on that stuff, I'm assuming, right? So
there wasn't. And you know why? Because there wasn't really anybody in place. Like, like a developmental coach. And you know, as a head coach, you've got 23 egos to deal with. So sometimes maybe, you know, you can't give player A quite the explanation that they needed because he's got so many other things going on, plus a game, plus whatever practice plan. And so, I think communication is vital.
For sure.
I don't think, you know, back in the day, you know, maybe coaches did it purposefully a little bit, you know, to have a player go and look in the mirror and ask himself, why am I not in the lineup? And whereas nowadays it doesn't work that way. Like players want communication. And I really tell the players that if they're having issues with not playing, or if there's a question that they want to have answered, but are afraid to go talk to the coach, it's not like it was 20 years ago. Our coaches have an open door policy. You can go in there. It doesn't mean you need to be confrontational, but airing things out is better than stewing in your room and playing mind games with yourself. And because it's not going to get you anywhere. It's going to make you feel, it's going to make you feel worse. It's going to make you feel more angry towards the coach. And it's happened 4 or 5 times with guys this year where they've gone in and talked to the coach and they come out of there feeling so much better.
Yeah.
And as a result, their play improves, or they go into practice and they have a renewed sense of, okay, I need to do this in order to get in the lineup. And more times than not, coaches see that and then they're like, okay, they're getting it now. I'm going to put them in the lineup.
Yeah.
So it's communication and everything. Oh, it's both sides, coaches and players, is huge nowadays.
And for any of the young parents out there that have young kids that are playing minor hockey, I think this kind of stuff that you're talking about right now, we're talking about a lot of the pro stuff, but this starts at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You know, and even, you know, kids upset about ice time. Well, mom or dad are upset about ice time. Maybe the kid's upset about ice time. But teaching your young kid at 9 or 10, I'll go with you, but you're going to ask the coach why you're not playing. And then when they get to 13, 14, 15, it's easier for them. It's never easy to go talk to your coach, but as you get older and you've done it a couple of times, now it's a little bit easier at 14, 15, 16. Hey, coach, just, you know, what do I need to do better? What do I need to get right?
That's the thing. The key is don't be confrontational.
Yeah.
Don't go in there being pissed off.
Yeah.
Just to have a conversation with them and just say, listen, I'm a little confused. Just curious. Like, what do I need to do better? Or why am I not playing? Just so I can, you know, because I want to get better and I want to be in the lineup. If you show coaches that you care and you want to be in the lineup and you don't go in there being, demanding and, you know, what do they say now? The kids are, what's the term? I'm having a senior moment. Privileged, entitled.
Yeah.
Entitled, you know.
Yeah.
As long as you go in there and you show that you're not that type of person, type of player, coaches will have all day for you and they'll talk with you because especially at the pro level, your success is going to be their success, and especially the American League level where it's a development league.
Yeah.
If you're developing the player, it's only going to be good on the coach. So there's no reason for the coach to screw any of the players over.
Yeah.
And there's proper ways to go about it and have a good conversation and you know, moving forward, it's just better for relationships.
Oh, for sure. And I think the other thing too, you see it a lot of times, if you're going to talk the talk, then you need to walk the walk. So a lot of times players will tell you what you want to hear. Okay, I got to work on that. I'll do better on that. And then they're not doing the extras. They're not staying after practice. They're not working out. So those are the things too. I think as a player, you gotta be accountable, right? You got to be accountable for how you're playing and what's going on. And if you're going to go ask these questions and get feedback from it, and sometimes, let's be honest, you go into a coach, you may already know the answers, but you just want to get dialogue going with that coach, and maybe he gives you some bullshit answer that you're like, okay, but that's fine. Take that, run with it, and add to it. So if he's telling you, you know, you got to back check more, fine. I'm going to back check and finish my hits. And I'm going to, you know, and I kind of take that one step, you know, especially if you want to make that AA team or that AAA team or that AHL team or that NHL team, like figure out, you know, get some answers, but then put some action items in place to be able to achieve that goal and whatever that goal is, you know. And a lot of times we see it at every level, right? We've got a lot of pretenders that, oh yeah, no, I'm going to work hard, and they're the first guy off the ice.
And those are the guys that generally don't make it. I mean,
for sure.
You know, you can't hide as a player anymore. Yeah. There's so much video. There's so much, there's just, you can't hide. Yeah. And coaches know, and believe me, I'm a parent and you're a parent, and, you know, my kids are trying to pull over on me what I tried to pull over on my parents. And they're like, no, I've been there, done that. I know. So it's the same with coaches. They've been there, they've done that. They know, they've dealt with so many players the guys that, like you said, are just, you know, bullshitting and and just tell you what you want to hear, they're not gonna have success and play for a long time.
No, for sure. Now, being on the other side of it, being on the management side and kind of the development side with players, looking at kind of when you were playing and kind of when you finished up playing to what it is now, are there any major differences that stand out to you as far as just even how the game, I know the game's changed, the rules have changed, things like that, but are there any kind of major differences that really pop to you? Like even as far as just team camaraderie or the going out after games or just the meshing, like anything like that you see that, what, man, it was maybe better back in the day than it is now, or something's different?
I think that part of it was a little bit better back in the day, because, especially at the NHL level, because back then you didn't charter. You were staying the night in a city after a game. And so more times than not, you're going out as a group together. And so there was that bonding there. The other thing, and I think it's a two-way street. Back in the day, we'd have practice and then we'd go for lunch, and, the veterans would take the young guys and we'd have beers and wings. And it's not necessarily like that now, because, even back 20 years ago when I played, after a game, you go in the trainer's room and have a beer. And nowadays it's protein shakes, and there's just so much money to be made that I think kids are really worried about perception. If coach hears they go out, out and have beer and wings. It's funny. The kids here in Hershey, like they've got a group together where they're playing video games against each other, but from different houses. You know what I mean? Like it's just
like a couple blocks away.
Yeah. So, and there's a couple guys that they have like video game nights where they get together, but it's just they're together. It's just a different way. But again, I think a lot of it has to do with the amount of money that can be made now. And it's, and the other thing is the salary cap. For me, I don't know if I'd have made the NHL had there been a salary cap back when I played, because it took me, good 7 years before I finally became an established NHL player. Teams don't really have that patience now.
Yeah. That's true,
or the time frame to allow these players, or they give them that much time to develop, because there has to be cost certainty. And if a guy, like usually the window's 3-4 years where they either get penciled in as an NHL, they're either in the NHL lineup or they're considered, career minor league or maybe a call-up guy.
Yeah.
And so that obviously has changed things a lot too.
Yeah. That's a good point.
The game is, oh my God, the game is so fast now, so exciting. There's a lot of the differences now are for the better.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things though that I do miss from the past.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure when you sit back and reminisce or you meet up with old buddies and stuff, it's,
all the stories
that,
are,
right?
you have Dale Hunter in London and just, whenever you get together with Huntsy, those stories come back. It's a blast.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then as far as, obviously now, doing what you do and kind of, and being involved at this level, are there things specific to goaltenders that you see kind of, obviously gears change and the fitness levels change and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, do you find goaltenders now more prepared to play at higher levels earlier?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it starts with, the coaching they get at an early age.
Yeah.
There's the length or the amount of time a goaltender takes now doesn't seem to be as long as it used to be for them to get established. I think because the game has changed so much, not only at the pro level, but all the way down, and kids are better players at a younger age. These goalies are being exposed to, the speed of the game, with technology with sticks, they're facing harder shots at a younger age. And I'm sure like the mental training, they're getting that at a younger age now as well.
Yeah.
But the one thing I do worry about with the modern day goalie is the injury rate. Like I'm a guy that had both hips done. I was a butterfly guy, but I wasn't nearly on my knees as much as these kids are now, and reverse VH and tracking back and forth, post to post, sliding on their knees. Like there's a lot of guys, a lot of modern day goalies I see are gonna go under the knife like I did for my hips, just because your hips aren't made to go down like that with the force that we generate when we go down, and then to stay down in that position. And that's the thing I worry about is post hockey, and how many of these kids are gonna require some sort of surgery.
It makes sense for sure. we'll kind of wrap up, and I really appreciate your time on this. But if you're talking to a young goaltender right now, maybe playing for Tri-Cities, or a young kid that's maybe 14, 15, kind of coming up, looking at maybe, obviously most kids that are playing high level at that age are, I want to play in the NHL. And is there one or two or three things that you would say that, listen, these are areas that you need to focus on? It doesn't have to be related to goaltender, but obviously mental toughness is one. But are there a couple areas that, if looking at a Vezina Trophy winner saying, hey, what, I got a son that plays, and what kind of advice, you're still involved in the game, you're Stanley Cup champ now, like what are 2-3 things that you could tell my boy that would maybe help him get in a little bit of an advantage?
Right. So, but the first thing I'd say for the kids that are playing minor hockey is, right now, just enjoy the game.
Yeah.
There's going to be a point in your life where you're going to know that you can play at a higher level, whether that's junior B, junior A, CHL, whatever, college. And then at that point, you've got to, obviously, fitness is first and foremost, especially, with the way the game is now. And footwork is paramount for a goaltender. You might not have played out at all as a kid, but working on your footwork, agility in the crease, and the mental side. There's so many aspects that go to goaltending. Some are hereditary. I mean, we have ocular testing for all our pros in training camp, and it's amazing. It's
crazy, eh?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like the goal. The guys will go and they'll come back, and we'll get the results back, and a couple of the guys they'll have elite eyes, like they can track the puck like there's nobody's business.
Yeah.
And other guys, they don't have those eyes, but they make up for it with something else, whether it's grit or positioning or whatever. But there's just so much involved with the positioning of the game now, or position of the game. So enjoy it while you're young. When it becomes more serious, yes, fitness is huge, and footwork.
Yeah,
footwork. It's because the game is so east-west now. It's not like when I played where guys would just come down barreling down the wing and let one rip because the D-man's going to lock the guy on the far side, so the pass isn't getting through. They can't. Obviously, there's no clutching, grabbing anymore. And the goalies are so good now that it's become an east-west game.
Yeah, you're trying to get goalies to move, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And going back, kind of wrapping up with this, but I think parents can do a lot to help their kids be more mentally tough and become more mentally tough, and just make, having them do chores. It sounds silly, but like I'll walk in sometimes after a snowstorm in London. I'll be, how many guys grabbed a shovel this morning? How many guys cleaned off your mom and dad's car? It's crazy. Like I didn't go to school until the driveway was shoveled some mornings. You know what I mean? Like that's just what we did. And I'm not saying my parents were better than any other parent, but we had certain things. I was not allowed to go to the outdoor rink and play shinny with my buddies until my homework was done.
You become disciplined. Like and that does work towards the mental part of the game. I think
it's huge. Yeah.
If you can, if you're disciplined in your approach to the game, your preparation, that it just putting yourself in a routine every day really affects your mind in a positive way. If you're kind of one of those lazy guys that doesn't pick up after himself, or depends on someone else, relies on someone else to do something for them, then usually during tough times they're not going to be able to find their way out of it. They're always looking for someone else to bail them out. Yeah, and I mean, and the other thing too, I think is huge, is let your kids fail. Yeah. Let them mess something up, let them, and let them try to fix it. Cause that's the one thing I think is, and I mean, no participation trophies, please.
No. And right. It was funny. My little guy's 5 and he was playing soccer this summer, and they got the year-end games or whatever. It was all good. And then everybody got a trophy, and he comes home and he's like, Dad, everybody got a trophy. He's like, should everybody get a trophy? I'm like, no. I said, no, like whoever won, and they're young. I said, no one won really. So no, nobody should get a trophy. Like It's great you guys all played, but no, the trophy goes to the winners. And I'm not trying to be a hard ass, but just that's life. Like your kid's going to cry every time you lose the championship or the gold medal game or whatever. No, it's part of it, man.
You learn your best lessons
for sure
through the hardships of life. And and unfortunately, as a society, we've gotten a little soft.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look back on your career, had you not gone through those ups and downs of the East Coast AHL, I mean, would you have had that much or as much success as you had? Maybe, maybe not. Though probably not, right? No. You look back on, well, I'm sure when you were going through at the time, you're like, screw everybody, I hate everybody, you know, like just going through miserable. But now when you look back, I'm assuming you're like, man, those are probably some of the most formidable years of my life as far as creating who you are now, right?
sure.
Is how you dealt with that and how you overcame it. And probably, I mean, I'm proud of you, but I mean, you probably have a sense of pride of like, man, overcame a lot of bullshit back in the day to be able to play 18 years in the show or pro hockey and get paid and do well and win, you know, and win. And I mean, there's a lot of success that has come with it, and a career now doing this stuff. And I don't think any of that, or probably not to this level, would have happened had you not battled through. Right.
Right. And take it further, you know, probably made me a better dad now too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like being able to, you know, cause your kids are going to go through some hard times, and, you know, because of your own experiences, you can help them through it. And so, yeah, I think that, you have to fail to succeed. And I tell that I always wish guys, you know, before they get called up, go through a stretch where they do struggle, because, you know, to have success and then get called up. Then what happens if you fall on your face? You don't have the tools to be able to get yourself out of that because you haven't experienced it yet. And so I like to see guys go up and down, successful, struggle, because I think moving forward as a pro, it's going to make them a better and more complete player.
Yeah. Yeah, I know for sure. And hopefully one day a better dad. Right?
Definitely, for sure.
There you go. Well, listen, buddy.
At the end of the day, that's the most important thing.
100%.
Yeah.
Man. Trying to like have good people, right? Because I mean, even the guys that we see right now, even in minor hockey, you see a kid who works hard, he's disciplined, he's accountable, like all those little things. I look at him like, he's going to be okay. He's going to be a good buddy. He's going to be a good dad one day if he chooses that. You know, he's going to be a good friend. Like there's all these little things. I'm like, yeah, he's gonna have a job when he's older.
He checked all the boxes.
Yeah, he'll figure it out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And where you have some kids who are like, oof, geez.
Yep.
Like,
and more times than not, they don't, right? They don't pan out.
Yeah,
so.
no, exactly. Listen, buddy, I really appreciate it. This was great.
That was fun.
Yeah,
Anytime.
thanks a lot, man. That was awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, buddy.